Exploring themes of self-sabotage, of the small one, of self-punishment. Let's first look at the carrier signal that allows an infant to take into their body all of the signals of the entire family system of both parents. So, with fiber optics, we have a much better understanding of how numerous signals can be delivered at the same time. A single fiber can transmit one signal that's like this, one signal that's like that, one signal that's like that, right? A piece of fiber can transmit thousands of different distinct signal patterns, distinct messages at the same time. And so can a human body, right? A human body is vastly more complex, vastly more malleable, vastly more intelligent than a piece of silicon, a piece of silica, a piece of fiber. And it can receive all the different messages, all the different beats, dissonant, insane, sociopathic, empathic, all at the same time. But a human ego without competence in, you could call it competence of the psyche, the psyche, psychological training, cannot decode all of these different signals. Meaning each one of us is carrying the mixture of signals of at least 7 generations on both sides of the family system. And each member of a family system, meaning our father, carries the signals, alive and dead, of 7 generations spread out throughout the family. Now, that's somewhat arbitrary, right? Why not go back 1,000 generations? Well, you could find it. Why not go back 3 generations, right? It would be louder, right? But the edits and sub-edits of all of the family system on both sides of the family are funneled into an infant before they have language. Dot, 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 boom, 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 papa, 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 boom, boom, papa. Each rhythm, each signal is forming a cacophony of noise, a cacophony of insanity, a sense of rhythm, a sense of harmony, a pattern, right? And some sounds are louder than others. Some signals drown out others, but are inconsistent, right? When it's there, poof, poof, poof. These sounds, these signals that are in our bodies, that are in our biology, come, right, in the pattern, right? The individual is a fractal representation of the whole. The family is a fractal representation of the cult, of the culture. The culture is a fractal representation of the species. It's part of the species probability field. Within each language is the supposition of all other languages. Within each culture is the supposition of all other cultures. It's part of the possibility, the probability field. All of this comes down to one, to an individual ego that wakes up, begins to perceive the world through the knowledge, the gnosis of good and evil, of polarity, that wakes up with a splintered, fragmented view of the world created by language as we try and piece the puzzle together. And many of the beats are forgotten. Some of the loudest beats in a family system, papa, suicide, papa, right? Despair and helplessness are forgotten, right? Much like a cult, a culture has spent thousands of years deliberately disregarding trauma and the PTSD and the intergenerational abuse that it forms. Much like our cult has deliberately and systemically silenced the past, not as the biological beat, but as the language that honors it, as the language that would allow us to connect the dot between this pattern and this pattern. These are silenced in a culture of shame, in a culture of incompetence, in a culture of punishment. It's not safe to connect the dots, right? Particularly, every cult has a hierarchy, right? Every cult has a hierarchy. And so if you connect the dots, you will see the corruption, the lies, the deception, the cruelty, whatever the words are. You will see it at the top in the ruling family, right? In royalty, in leadership. You will see these patterns refracted at the top, and you will see them refracted at the bottom. When they are refracted at the bottom, the top punishes the bottom, right? This is always the way of it. The president bestows the death penalty on so-and-so for these things. The president bestows life imprisonment on this person, on this family, for these things. But the president never bestows this on themselves, right? And this creates a certain sadness, a certain schizophrenia, a certain loneliness, a certain dissociation, because there's a double standard. If not immediately in the leader themselves, power exaggerates all of the flaws within the cult in the family in proximity to power, right? So if for some reason the primary leader, the primary pinnacle of a power system, of a cult, is above average, right? It's unlikely, but they may be above average. In a political system, they may be above average in schizophrenia, in deception, because the voter doesn't like to vote for truth. If you tell a voter, look, most of the power lies with you. If you get off your ass, stop watching TV, get out and meet your neighbors and do something, you're going to have way more impact on the quality of your life than anything I can do. And so, how many of you are getting off your ass and not watching sitcoms today? That's how good your neighborhood will be. And my best leadership is just to point out that obvious reality. I have very little to do with it and probably should dismantle more of my power structure, give you back a little bit more of your money, point out that if you don't spend it for community well-being, well, now's your chance to suffer and learn about the pros and cons of different approaches, right? And we shouldn't impose a one-size-fits-all. And, really, I'm just here to point out and tell stories and let you get on with your life. Let's take a look at this neighborhood over here. Seem to be doing some good stuff, right? These people got out and had, right, a Sunday potluck, and they all fixed the holes in their street for 1/10 of the money that the local government could have done. Bravo, right? They have a street, and more importantly, they start knowing each other. They have a community, right? Bravo. You see, the public doesn't like voting for that voice, right? They like voting for the voice that says, there's these horrible people over here, they're ruining your life, but I will save your life if you just vote for me. And that's, of course, the biggest lie, right? And so a public that votes for lies has an uncommon percentage of deception, perhaps grandiosity, etc., in their leaders, right? And grandiose, highly deceived people cannot do much within the limited terrain that leaders could do anything, right? And so that's not a very, a very, well, it's a system that does what it does, right? A culture addicted to blame and self-pity and righteousness will continue to elect people that promise to rescue them from the unfairnesses of the world, etc., and will be betrayed again and again and again by the very nature that liars always betray you, right? First to get something and then to get something more. And so that's the way that system works. Now, coming back to this beat, right? This pattern that repeats itself over and over again. When it's not spoken, when it's not spoken, it repeats. So what do we do with it, right? What do we do with it in a psychologically illiterate culture? Well, we relive it. We repeat it. We don't know why. We just have to eat something. We don't know why we can't do the thing we know we ought to do. We don't know why we won't take the step forward when there is all the opportunity in the world. We won't do it. We won't do it because some part of us feels unworthy. And where does that unworthiness come in the family? Who did what in the family that is so unspeakable that it is consciously buried, right? This is so shameful as a family. We are all so ashamed of it that we avoid looking in this direction at all. We cannot acknowledge that this came from us, right? So we bury it. We bury it with pausing breath. When that subject, when that topic comes up, we look away. We hold our breath. We are silent. We look down. We are ashamed. Those of us who know in the family system, we are ashamed. We are silent. We acknowledge there is a connection between us and the atrocity and the unforgiven and the unforgivable. We hold our breath. We are silent. We are ashamed. But that holding of the breath, that silence, is not communicated overtly to the child as we have an unforgivable past in our family, but it is communicated in the body. When there is a certain amount of exuberance in the child, it is not mirrored. When there is a depression, when there is a shame in the child is comforted. When there is a certain exuberance, a certain exaltation in the child, it is dishonored, right? A family that carries shame cannot connect with enthusiasm, the divine within, because the divine has been separated from the unforgivable past. Right? Your uncle murdered these people in cold blood. We survived as a family on the wealth of your uncle. Your uncle did unspeakable things. We are ashamed. We cannot face and feel close to God. We accept that we survived, but we also accept that we are no longer worthy of blessing. We are no longer worthy of enthusiasm to be filled with divinity. And so when our child brings this light, brings this energy into the world, we turn away, we hide, we look down. And the child understands that their divinity is unwelcome in the system by the pattern, silent, unspoken, screaming in the undeniable fact that you have never blessed me with your presence when I have been filled with God. When I have been filled with God, Goddess, all that is, with the radiance of creativity, you have always turned away. My presence has no place at your table, and I need you, says the infant, right? I want to exist, and so I turn away. I understand that to belong to the family, I must turn away from God. Not the church, that's a wonderful punisher, right? Give us your money to atone for your sins. Oh, that's easy with unworthiness. Promise to pray to the one people that we say to pray to atone for your, innate misery. Okay, that's doable. But be so enthusiastic, so filled with God that you have no interest in going to church. That's unacceptable. That's the part that does not feel welcome, right? So who is the most divine captive, right? Is it not the joyful innocence, the enthusiasm that has no honor, that is betrayed, that is turned away from again and again? Is it not that one that becomes the most unlovable of them all, right? Every infant believes that it's their fault and turns away from the inner deities, turns away from God, Goddess, all that is, in order to find the beat that is known, that is acceptable, the beat of shame, the beat of fear. Every time we sigh like this, we come together as a family. Every time we look down at these moments, we all know unspeakably we are one. We are familiar with the cult of denial, with the cult of shame. These carrier signals are sent in the body. They're sent in rage at times when you start to deviate too far from the system. And if you leave the pattern, right? If you leave the beat of the song that you're in, you no longer belong to that system, to that cult. And where are you then? Are you cast out? Do you regress to the infant who knows it's all about them? It's all unworthy. Or are you free? Right? Both are possibilities, probabilities, right? If you do your work, if you understand the lineage within the system in which you operate, if you understand why, what is so unforgivable, right? Well, this and this and this happened. Okay, let's take a look at that. Why did that happen, right? What was Uncle Harry's world like? What happened to precipitate this, right? Whatever is unspoken is unconscious and repeats, right? Consciousness iterates by bringing awareness, bringing a healthy sense of critical analysis, and the ability and willingness to grow, to love, to transcend, to transform the pattern into a healthier pattern. But it must happen by looking at and moving through, right? To love by dissociation, like I love you by not seeing you. I can't see this about you or I won't love you. That's a shortcut love, right? But I love you, I see that, I see why you did that, and now we move beyond it, right? A piece of fiber across the Atlantic carries millions of signals, and within those signals, the signature of a cult can easily be found. An infant is born, and in the signals coming into their environment, in the signals passed down from the body of the mother, they know everything. The entire history of the cult is in that body, right? But they don't have the skill to decode it. They don't have the skill to make art with it. They don't have the ability to write music. They have the ability to shut down, it's too much. They have the ability to identify, to cling to one of the signals and say, that's me, that's me. I don't want to let it go because then I don't know who I am. I don't know how to dance with the signals and find and create a new signal to become an adult, to become a shaman that helps people navigate the wave fields of probability that they find themselves in, right? In family system theory, the first child takes their preferred role. That preferred role is no longer available, so the second child will take a complementary role, the third role. There's always a role for a black sheep if there are enough children, and that may be the only role left, right? And so if the other roles have been taken, the black sheep emerges. Or sometimes the identity is so fragile in an infant before the black sheep, before the shame is transferred to them, that they cling to it defiantly. You want me to play the black sheep? I'll be the black sheep. I'll do it even worse than you imagined. I will be your black sheep, right? And unless the cult can take back the role, take back the curse of dumping shame on a young child, it will continue, right? And at some level, the grown-ups, not the adults, the grown-ups will look away because they know at some level, we did this, we gave this to this child. We don't know how to take it back. And so there's often even an enabling, a hiding, a protecting, right? We know this is our fault, but we'll punish it. We'll punish our child if necessary in public. That is the way. That is what happens. That is what is.